Good afternoon, 49er faithful. It is Monday, a Victory Monday. Very excited to be celebrating a win, especially a hard-fought one like it was yesterday. Very excited to have a return guest today. We are on a little bit earlier than we usually would be on a Monday. Welcome to another episode of Monday Afternoon Quarterback with Jack Hammer. Welcome back to the MAC with Jack. Jack Hammer of the Santa Rosa Press Democrat. Jack, it's great to have you back, my friend.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
Absolutely. Always love your breakdown of the game. Wanted to give a special shout out. I saw in the comments earlier, it's not here, so I can't post it, but a special shout out to JC, who is the newest member of the Sneakerhead community, a fellow sneakerhead here on Schuh's channel. It looks like we got some good involvement already. Got folks coming in from Japan. Always good to have the international crowd here. Texas Niner playing off of, I said yesterday, Jack, someone asked on my stream, you know, what's the song that you might play? Oh, no, I was on in the morning in the pregame with Silverado Kev. And someone asked what my favorite pump-up song is. And for me, it goes back to Candlestick. It is the Rolling Stones' Start Me Up, because that's what they played before every kickoff. And me and my dad, we hear that song, man, and it just fires up for the Niners. That's for sure.
See, that's the good part about having two old guys on here today. I remember that 100%. As they got ready to open up the game, that was the song they played with it.
Yeah, exactly. That is Niner fandom to me. I hear it and it brings me back 100%. Very cool. Good to see everybody in the comments. We're going to get right into it because we got a couple of topics to get through. But as always, we will try and bring in your comments and questions throughout. So if you have anything specific for Jack, make sure you put it in there and I will attempt to get to it as we go through. All right, Jack, this one sets up a really gutsy win. Very impressive, tough win on the road against what I would classify as an elite offense and a stout defense. The 49ers were tested with their backs up against the ropes, fighting back from close to what felt like a knockout punch once we got into overtime. The 49ers pulled out a huge and inspirational victory Sunday. It wasn't a pretty game, but it felt like a gutsy win. What was your overall takeaway from that game, your overall impressions of it, Jack?
No, I agree with you. It was a gutsy win. It was a good team victory. If you go through that game, there's just a lot of heroes, I guess you could call them, kind of throughout the game with the 49ers. You know, they didn't play necessarily spectacularly. It was kind of the opposite of what we saw last week in Seattle. The 49ers were the advantageous team this time around because of the fumbled punt returns and a bad penalty that really helped them in the first half. And then when it came down to it at the end of the game, their biggest players made the biggest plays. Nick Bosa with a huge stop in overtime, forcing the field goal. That play cannot be understated how big that was, because that gave the offense the opportunity to even get on the field and win the game for them on the next drive.
That was huge. There felt like a time during the game where the defense couldn't make the needed stop, that whether it was they were gassed or Cincinnati had figured out a couple of things that allowed them to take advantage of the 49ers' depleted secondary. And then toward the end of the fourth quarter and into overtime, it felt as if the defense gained new life. And potentially it was because they saw the clutch plays happening on the other side of the ball and key players stepping up in key moments. There were certainly a lot of positive things to take away from it. But again, I have to go back to the idea that this was a huge East Coast game. The big travel to go in there, you know, it wasn't the early start. We got that advantage, and maybe that saved us getting the 1:30 start. But it was a tough opponent, and it was coming off of an emotional letdown in the game against Seattle. So to step back up, it really felt like it could propel the 49ers. It felt like the kind of momentum that could be carried forward into some of the remaining games down the stretch where the 49ers need to win to stay in the driver's seat. It sets up that way. The 49ers are in the driver's seat with regard to the wild card playoff seeding. With this game now in the rearview mirror, with a W in the win column, what do you see as the clearest and most realistic road to the playoffs for the 49ers going forward?
The 49ers just need to continue to win. And I know that's simple to say, but here's the thing. When you look at the Rams and what they have happened with them right now, they have a number of their top players are going to miss tonight's game due to COVID-19 restrictions. So if they lose tonight, that puts the 49ers really a half of a game behind them, right? They're a game behind them in the loss column, but it could possibly set up a situation where the 49ers go down to Los Angeles in week 18 and are playing that game to get the 5 seed in the playoffs. Getting to that 5th seed, I think, gives them a big advantage in terms of travel, and it might give them a nice advantage when it comes to the matchup that they have to face. But I'm going to say this, and I've said this a number of times over the last few weeks. I'm not worried about the 49ers playing any of these teams in the NFC. The Cincinnati team, yesterday against Cincinnati, say what you want about the way that they won, but that's a team that almost beat Green Bay, who is the number 2 team in the NFC, just a few, earlier in the year in a game in Cincinnati. And the 49ers, went in there and put more points on the board than Aaron Rodgers and the Packers did against that Bengals defense. So there's not a team in the NFC that I'm afraid of with the 49ers going up against in the playoffs if they get there. I think that the road for them needs to be as little travel as possible. So that's why I would say getting Dallas in week 1 would be their best matchup.
And so the best way to ensure that, the most likely way to ensure that would be for the 49ers to claim that 5th seed and then match up most likely against Dallas in that scenario for the first round of the playoffs.
That's the scenario I think that works out the best for the 49ers in terms of travel. I think Dallas is a little bit less travel than going up to Green Bay. The nice part about going to Dallas is you're going to have a clean game in terms of weather. You don't know what you're going to get in Green Bay.
Right.
And then after that, most likely they might be able to go to Arizona in week, round 2, which I'd like to see that matchup again.
That would be great as far as travel breaks out. I'm not either. Nor am I scared of any of the opponents within the NFC. I would say that there are certainly better matchups for the 49ers, and that when it comes to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I would picture that as the worst matchup for the 49ers, because it does add significant miles to traveling out to Tampa Bay, but also because of that defensive line potentially presenting the most issues for the 49ers. I look here, one of my next follow-up questions here that I'm anxious to answer for the 49ers is the same as Niner faithful. Rob, do we win out the rest of the season? I have to say that in my mind, I find that probability to be unlikely, that I see it more likely to be the 49ers closing out with a record somewhere closer to 3-1. Certainly they could win out against all of the remaining opponents, but given their inconsistent play, I do struggle to believe that they will win the games that they're supposed to win and rise to the occasion for those two tough remaining road games that they have. The one against Tennessee, the week of Christmas, which presents all sorts of distractions, and then end of the season against the Rams, where potentially you have the 5th seed on the line. What would you say the odds of the 49ers closing out 4-0 would be?
I don't think it's very strong that they're going to get to 4-0. The game in Tennessee is obviously the one that, when you look at their schedule, is going to be the most difficult, not necessarily in terms of maybe the matchups for the 49ers, but just in terms of that's a short week. I'm not worried about the Christmas piece, like you said, because they're going to be playing before Christmas.
Yes.
On the 23rd. But that's just a short week traveling all the way across to Tennessee. Kind of seems like a tough scheduling deal for the 49ers there. Fortunately, they have the home game this week, and then they travel after that. But it's a quick turnaround, and with this 49ers team that's kind of beaten up a little bit, I think they're going to struggle with that quick turnaround. So I say maybe 3-1 probably at best for them.
That is really how I see it. I'm thankful that we had the trap game against Atlanta in 2019 that we can look back on in recent history, because I hope that the 49ers will use that as motivation to not allow themselves to have that same pitfall against Atlanta at home, a team that they should be able to beat. But, it is fair to say that on any given Sunday, you never know how the ball is going to bounce. Before we move on from this topic, just bringing in Sean 951 Niners Super Chat. This felt like the Super Bowl 2019 game. Dominate 3+ quarters, 20-6, and then Burrow airs it out and scores at will. But Jimmy hit his throws this time. We will get into Jimmy Garoppolo in a topic all to itself, because I do think it requires nuance. You have to break down the complete game for Jimmy Garoppolo. But I will say this, and then would be interested to hear your take as well, Jack, that I saw some throws on Sunday that were just phenomenal throws. I mean, very tight windows. Yes, most of them were in the middle of the field where Jimmy is more comfortable, but that's what you do. You play to your own strengths, and his ability with that quick release to hit some of those reads over the middle in such tight spaces, it really is something to behold. And I still do get frustrated in watching him as well, but I have to call out that he did, as Sean points out here, hit some amazing throws in this one.
Oh, he definitely did. He had some really nice completions, and one of his better passes of the day was an incompletion, and that was the ball down the sideline to George Kittle. He dropped it right in the numbers to Kittle there, and Kittle's not able to hold it. But that's a play where I don't really like to talk about, oh, that should have been pass interference, but that's a play that he's having to reach out one-handed because the guy's holding his left arm back. But that ball hits him right between the numbers.
So impressive.
Yeah, and then the throw to there was a couple of really nice ones, but the throw to Juwan Jennings there in overtime, that back shoulder throw to Jennings along the right sideline.
Can we call out that that's outside the numbers?
Oh yeah, that's outside. Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the funny thing, right? Everybody, I remember last week, everybody talking about, there was a bunch of talk about how Garoppolo was hitting over the middle and teams are mudding up the middle. Dan Orlovsky put that out.
Yes.
Two of the biggest throws of the game from Garoppolo were outside the numbers. The completion to Kittle to put him in field goal range at the end of regulation was outside the numbers on a corner route. Great catch by Kittle, but Garoppolo put it on him on time before he got hit. And then the throw to Jennings there in overtime on the second play of overtime. Just a really nice back shoulder throw, and Jennings has really stepped up in the last, when given the opportunity, he's really stepped up.
He really has great hands, ability to high point the ball, great in run blocking. I'm very impressed with him as a third wide receiver. Okay, before we move on to the next topic, one last follow up on the impact this game can have going forward. Having now won that, I read a Matt Mayoko piece that clearly laid out a path to the playoffs that allowed the 49ers to fall to 8-9 in a particular scenario and still make the playoffs. Do you see it as a pretty clean way to finish, that if the Niners do beat the teams on the schedule that remain that they should, meaning Atlanta and Houston at home, and finish 2-2, thereby finishing totally at 9-8, do you feel that actually still sets up pretty well for the 49ers having a decent chance to grab that last wildcard playoff spot in a worst case scenario?
If the 49ers get to 9-8, they're almost guaranteed, because when you start looking at all the tiebreakers and everything like that, they have head-to-head over a number. If they get to 9-8, beating Atlanta and teams like that, and then that gives them the tiebreaker advantage over Atlanta. They already have the tiebreaker over Minnesota because of the head-to-head. They have the tiebreaker over a number of the teams that they play that they're right there with. So if they get to 9-8, the 49ers are in, and they're most likely going to even be in as high as the 8th seed. Or
I love it.
Sixth seed.
Sixth seed.
Not 8th.
Sixth seed. I love it. All right, we got one. Before we move on, I'm going to go this one from George as he brings in at Rob Schuh. You already know I love the channel, man. Jack, big fan of yours as well. Wanted to ask you both, what made you guys get into podcasting, Niner reporting? I'll answer this short and sweet, and then I'll allow Jack to do the same, in that I just love talking 49ers. And obviously for me, it was, Buggen put it up there. For me, it was reaching out to Grant with a few of my opinions, and then Grant allowing me to graciously come on his show. And that's where I realized I could combine two of my loves, which one is just talking and have people listening to me, and the other is talking specifically about 49ers content. And when the two came together, it was just too perfect to ignore for me. Jack, what was it that really brought you into the space?
I started following Grant over at the Press Democrat blog back in when he started with there in 2011. Uh,
Yes, a
and so
decade ago.
yeah, and so I was commenting over there quite a bit, and then one thing led to another, and some of the other commenters over there said, "Hey, why don't you start writing your own blog? Why don't you start writing your own stuff?" And so I started doing some stuff on my own little site, and eventually kind of transitioned over to 49er Web Zone. Wrote for them for a little bit. Just kind of was bouncing around doing some stuff, trying to kind of get my feet going with that. I had to step away for a couple of years. It just didn't work out. There were some things that came up that I needed to address. Uh, so I stepped away from writing for a little bit, and then during the pandemic, I happened to be at home one day, not a whole lot going on. Was watching Grant on YouTube talking to his guys, and I'm like, I can do that. So I saw that WebZone was looking for a writer, and I actually just reached out to Grant and said, "Hey, I'm thinking of applying over there. Reaching out to him and seeing if I could write for him again." He said, "Well, you can write for me." So instead, I started writing for All for Nerds SI. That led into the YouTube channel, because that's what you have to do with all your articles over there. You had to have a video. So
That's right. Got to have the video to go with it.
yeah, and so that's what's kind of led into it. And then I was fortunate enough to be able to get brought on by the Santa Rosa Press Democrat for the 49ers blog there this year. So it's just been just a really kind of a wild journey over the last, really over the last 18 months or something like that. It's really taken off.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure in my book to be involved with you over the past, 6 to 9 months and getting to know you and watch that journey as you join the Santa Rosa Press Democrat. I love reading your writing, and I think that you break down the game better than most of the people out there on 49ers YouTube. I've got Jack Hammer top of my list as some of favorite episodes and best guest to have on here as well. All right, getting back into the Niner topics, looking at the offensive line performance, Jack. 49ers were really not able to get the run game going as one, meaning me, might have liked to see going into the game. I really wanted there to be better balance in the game. I would have favored a 55-45 run-to-pass ratio. The end result was that the 49ers basically passed at a 2-to-1 ratio with regard to the run game. And I certainly didn't believe going in that was a recipe for a win, but they pulled it out. That's what was necessary. That's what the Bengals defense really allowed them to do or dictated. What did you see overall from the offensive line unit in this one that allowed the 49ers to win in a game that maybe they didn't play in the way that they would have set out to play from the outset?
The offensive line, they're going to struggle if they're put in positions where the defense can really kind of tee off on them in pass protection. So this kind of start the offensive line, you have to look at it in two separate sides: their run blocking and their pass blocking, because their run blocking yesterday wasn't bad. I've watched a little bit of the film from the game, just the first quarter of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Even watching it on TV, I got the sense early on that it was going to be a tough game for them to run, especially on first down, because you could see Cincinnati really flowing hard to the ball. As soon as watch Kyle Juszczyk when he goes in motion and then they'd run the toss sweep. The 49ers don't run the toss sweep very well when they do that, because you get the linebackers are flowing so fast. And then yesterday you saw them doing that really with Deebo Samuel as well. Every time Deebo Samuel's in the backfield, they're overflowing, bringing guys up into the box and so on. So the running game struggled a little bit yesterday, but they did put up 100 yards on 23 carries. And the offensive line did a decent job on some of those run blocks. And I don't think you can, when you look at the way that the Cincinnati was defending them, there's just more men in that box than there are 49ers people to block them. And
right.
And that they weren't able to make that one guy miss in the hole yesterday.
It is pretty spectacular what they're able to do in the run game. I mean, when I watch that Deebo Samuel run, right, following Tom Compton to the end zone, that's a glorious thing. How would you compare when specifically talking about Tom Compton? I mean, let's say this, that according to pressures allowed by PFF, that in order, ranked order, it was Brunskill with 6 pressures allowed that was the most vulnerable in PFF's opinion. Tom Compton after that with 4, and Laken Tomlinson with 3. So the right side of the line when it comes to pass protection, not quite as stout as you would obviously want them to be. But let's focus on the run game, run blocking. in comparison to that pass protection. What do you see as the difference? And can the 49ers hide Tom Compton's deficiencies in pass blocking by focusing on running to his side and emphasizing his ability to block in space?
Yeah, that's pretty much what they've done since McGlinchey went down. That's pretty much what they've tried to do is minimize the likelihood that he's going to have to be in a big pass blocking situation. We've seen it bite him, right? It bit him last week in Seattle 2 times. It bit him yesterday as well with the 5 sacks that they gave up. They're yesterday, the run game is one way that you can mitigate the pass rush. The other one is by throwing on first down. And
yes.
And I tweeted that out after the first series that the 49ers might, and I put it on my live blog. The 49ers might think about trying to throw the ball here on first down a little bit more. And they did. They threw the ball 13 times on first down yesterday. Garoppolo was 12 of 13 for 155 yards and 2 touchdowns on those first down plays. So he made it work for the 49ers by doing that. And those were that was their best down to throw. The rest of the game he struggled, and I think a lot of that was because pressure was bigger.
And that's really because the defenses have to be more respectful of the run on first down, and therefore their allegiance is sort of split there, right? They have to be prepared for the fact that the 49ers are a very capable running team and therefore cannot pin their ears back and get after the 49ers in the same way as if you take first and second down to run for 3-4 yards a pop and then are forced into a passing situation on third down where the defense knows you're going to pass and are able to defend you as such.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly, and that's what you saw happening yesterday. And getting back to your other piece on the run, the run game yesterday was okay. There's just so many guys in the box, and they needed Garoppolo to come up with big plays yesterday to kind of counteract that.
Yeah, a team that has a very stout run defense that is top 5 in the league on total yards allowed as a rushing defense. They were allowing 4.1 yards per carry coming into the contest, but that's still a below average amount. That's still a top half of the league in average yards per carry. And obviously the total yardage very good, being in the top 5. So they came in and the Bengals set out to stop the run, and it tilted the 49ers in the other direction. And obviously the 49ers were able to pull it out. We'll touch on that a bit more when we get to Jimmy Garoppolo. But in staying focused on the offensive line, yeah, I retweeted just a moment ago, I believe it's a year-long PFF grade of 99 for Trent Williams. Just how special has the season been for Trent Williams, and what did you see from him yesterday in the game against the Bengals?
No, he had a really good game. You knew that he was going to have a tough matchup because he had Hutchinson on his side, but he did a really good job over there. The holding call wasn't his fault. If you go back and watch that play, the quarterback should have got the ball out before the holding call was made. Just based off the way that those reads and that progression should have gone. So I felt like he played really well, and Trent Williams kind of is the glue that holds his team together because they know that they can leave him over on that side pretty much by himself, and they can send their help up into the middle or over to the right. And you saw that yesterday with it starting to send the running backs up into the middle to help kind of seal that off, especially after the sack in the first possession.
You brought up the hold, and when I rewatched that, I just kept my eye on his feet. His feet are something to behold for a big man. Yes, he took the outside hold, which was what ended up getting called, but he recovered so nicely in his footwork such that he didn't truly get beat. He was able to stay in front of the defender the entire time. For a man his size, honestly, if you're watching film, if you're watching breakdown, keep your eye on the dude's feet. It is unreal. He moves like such a smaller man when it comes to his choppy steps and ability to stay centered, to keep his balance the entire time. So impressive for me.
Yeah, and on that hold, I don't think that the hold was actually, I know on the TV, they were talking about how he had his hands out here.
Yeah, on the exterior.
Yeah, but I don't think that's where the hold came from. I think the holding call came because Garoppolo was holding onto the ball and kind of stepped up, and then Hutchinson started to slide into the inside. And then you saw Williams have to kind of reach and grab. I think the reach and grab is when the flag came out, because all of a sudden the referee saw his arm out. When he sees his arm out, the flag comes out. If that ball had come out on time, they're not going to call the holding for what he did originally. So
that makes sense. And there were a couple of balls that I thought maybe didn't come out on time. I'd like to get into the sacks, but I think that belongs more in the Jimmy Garoppolo topic.
Sure.
So we'll get into a couple of super chats that have come in. Swift Dog 49er faithful coming together to pull it out. Happy birthday, Leto. I'm not sure who Leto is. I probably should know that, but we crushed it anyway. So happy birthday to Leto, whomever. Happy birthday wishes for sure. Swift Dog, let me know if I should know what that acronym means, or if Leto is just someone in your life, in which case, a very, very happy birthday to them. That Niner guy coming in, I feel bad for Ambry playing cover 2, is definitely not his game, and he got roasted. Having said he's not great right now, big free agent money coming to cornerback 22. I definitely, I'll get to the second part of that, and then Jack, if you have anything to say on it. We will touch on Ambry Thomas specifically in a topic later. I thought that yes, he had some glaring weaknesses. I didn't think it was all bad. I'll be more interested to hear Jack's piece on that when we get to it. But I agree wholeheartedly that the 49ers have for too long invested primarily in the defensive line and neglected to some extent their corners. And this free agency period and this upcoming draft will be a critical moment for the 49ers to invest in some way, either with big free agency dollars, which big is a relative term. The 49ers will not have too much to spend depending on how free agency breaks out and depending on the salary cap final numbers. But it doesn't look like they'll have a huge amount to spend. And they're down a first-round pick. So the highest they're going to draft a cornerback would be in the second round, barring a trade up from the second round pick. But I do believe they will invest in that position. Jack, do you agree with that? Or will the 49ers just double down on defensive line depth?
It's funny because they only have 33 guys under contract for next year, 32 guys, $10 million in cap space. So there's not going to be a whole lot of money to go around. Even when if you think about getting rid of Jimmy Garoppolo, okay, that gets you to 36 million, but you still have 20 plus guys that you need to sign and a draft class and everything else that goes along with it. So I don't see them spending big money in free agency on a cornerback. I think they're going to go out and get somebody that's kind of, maybe in the middle of the road. If they're or take somebody in the second round, but even there, you're looking at a end of the second round guy, because the 49ers look like they're going to be in the playoffs, which is going to put them, in the bottom 14 of the second round by the time they draft. So, barring any kind of trade to move up, kind of thing. So
that makes sense. I could see them spending, that lower grade level free agency on a cornerback, right? Probably not going to be in the 10 million plus, but may spend a little bit more than they did in the bargain signing of Jason Verrett on the 1-year deal, that they may look for that average level of cornerback play and then take another rookie, potentially second, third round, as they did this year. But it's early. Ambry Thomas could surprise us going forward. He is a rookie. He is now getting playing time. That's what we've all been asking for the rookies. All right, let's flip to the other side of the line, the other side of the trenches. Even without any depth at the cornerback position, the 49ers defense was able to contain the Bengals' impressive offensive attack for the most part. I would say DJ Jones and Eric Armstead, for me, continue to be an impressive pairing against the run. I take every opportunity to give the DJ Jones barbecue sauce promo. I support his dad, Big Dave, and their gifts to charity. But yes, they pair nicely against the run. And then the combined unit forcing a ton of pressure on Burrow all day, protecting the weak secondary. Jack, how impressed were you by the overall effort on Sunday? And in particular, anyone not named Nick Bosa, as we're going to touch on him specifically a little bit later.
Yeah, no, the performance of the defensive line yesterday was really strong. Not talking about Nick Bosa, I think if you want to look at the 49ers pass rush outside of Bosa, you really need to then start to look at Arden Key and the job that he's doing inside. Arden
on
Key
the interior, I love it.
Yeah, I think he's really their best interior pass rusher that they have on the team right now. He's up to 4 sacks on the season, which is still extending his career high. they just did a really good job up front yesterday against the run as well. They pretty much, for the most part, shut down Joe Mixon, which was a huge key in the game for me. Once they did that, everything else kind of fell into place. And with the defensive line, they weren't getting to the quarterback often early on, but they were putting pressure on him. They were making him move around quite a bit, forcing him to take those underneath throws and work their way down the field. And for the 49ers, it paid off with holding them just to those 2 field goals in the first 3/4 of the game.
It was critical. And to your point, people can say what they want about PFF. It is something that's open to interpretation, but by their calculations, the San Francisco 49ers finished with 27 total pressures, which is the second most on the season. A very dominant game, in particular by Nick Bosa. We'll touch on that later, but he led the way with 9 pressures. Samson Ebukam, 4. Eric Armstead, 4. Arden Key, 3. Charles Omenihu, Charlie with 2. I love it. Love to see him adding something. Are you seeing anything, Jack? Because for me, when I look at Cincinnati's defense, I see the true bookend formation, right? You have 10.5 sacks, 11.5 after Sunday for Hendrickson, and then on the other side of it, 7.5 sacks from a complimentary bookend pass rusher. It reminds me very much of the 49ers when they did have Dee Ford opposite. So assuming that we don't get Dee Ford back. Not that I'm counting him out. I just don't want to take for granted just how severe coming back from that back injury is. Do you see any flashes from a complimentary bookend rusher for Bosa, or is your sense that we're going to see this platoon effort going forward where it's got to be a combination of Arden Key, Omenihu, and Ebukam?
Well, I think that, Ebukam has become the starter over there in place of Dee Ford. He's become your starting guy there. They kind of move guys around that defensive line here and there, like the sack by Bosa, for example, in overtime that we talked about earlier. That's a play in which Key wasn't inside. Key was on the outside on the right on that play, and they had Ebukam lined up next to him, standing up. And then Ebukam, remember, he was a linebacker before he came to the 49ers.
Right, for the Rams.
Dropping into coverage. So because they were playing a zone, it was a zone behind it. They showed blitz, but then they dropped into a zone with one of their defensive ends / linebackers dropping into coverage and able to move around. So, their basic setup here is really strong. Ebukam's coming on. I think he had a sack yesterday. On one of them, I think they might have split the sack. I'm not sure what it was.
Yeah, and that was like a motor sack, right? It was right at the end, and he just kept fighting, and he was the one that ended up getting. He didn't generate the initial pressure, but he cleaned it up.
Yeah, and that's typically what he's going to do. He's not a guy that's going to be able to run around the edge like Bosa can or like Dee Ford was able to in 2019. He's more of a guy that's going to – no, well, he just doesn't have the moves to get there. He's a linebacker, but playing in that position. But he's a guy who's just – his motor just keeps running. And he's a cleaner up kind of guy. He has that closing speed to where when the quarterback has the move, he has the ability to now get up there and make the play. And we saw that yesterday. And real quick, you mentioned Dee Ford. The Flyers have till Wednesday on 4, and
that's when the window closes, right? If they don't activate him by Wednesday, that is it for the season.
Yeah, and Kyle Shanahan told us today that he doesn't expect Ford to be active.
Well, here's to Ford, man. I don't talk trash about the fact that he can't play. I feel badly for the man who is fighting to do what he loves in this world, is a world-class athlete, and clearly just can't go. And so I feel for him. I wish him nothing but the best. I hope that he's able to get back to it if he wants to. And if the smart move is to step away, I hope he's able to make that decision for he and his family as well. All right, let's let that take us into, one last final question on this. Just a quick one for you on the defensive line. Is this defensive line good enough right now to make up for the fact that this secondary is so thin going forward? Short answer.
Yes.
Nice. I love hearing that. All right, George MFN Kittle. I think you all know what the MFN stands for. I need not say it and get banned by YouTube. George Kittle finished the game with 13 receptions out of 15 targets for a total of 151 tough yards and a touchdown. With Debo getting dinged up and drawing more focus from defenses, Kittle seems to have awoken and risen to the occasion, right? He has risen. In the post-game presser, he indicated it was, just his name getting called more by Coach Shanahan and Jimmy just throwing the ball his way more. Is it really that simple, or do you see something else leading to the resurgence of George Kittle?
I think it's as simple as the ball going in his direction. A few weeks ago, after the Minnesota game, I did some checking into his numbers, and his targets were definitely down from where they should be, or where they had been in, like, say, 2019 when Garoppolo was there. And I think, even over the course of his career up until 2021, his targets were down on a seasonal basis. So we've definitely seen the Frontiers get back to where they needed to with Kittle, and he's responded by making big play after big play, and he's making some really tough catches, and making Garoppolo look good.
Unbelievable. The stats, I mean, this was all over Twitter, so if you follow 49ers Twitter, this is not going to be news to you, but in summation, for those that do not, because quite honestly, I said it on Sunday, 49ers Twitter and Twitter in general can be a dark space, and sometimes I just got to put that thing down and get back to my positivity. But today it was not, because it's Victory Monday. What George Kittle has done since returning from injury in Week 9, in a summation, 38 catches, which is tied for the most amongst all tight ends, 530 yards, 120 more than any other tight end, 6 receiving touchdowns, most by any NFL player since Week 9, 125.5 fantasy points, most among tight ends, 233 yak yards, first. PFF offensive grade, first. PFF receiving grade, first. Touchdowns, first. Yards, second. Yards after the catch, again, first. Yards per route run, second. Missed tackles forced, second. Passer rating when targeted, first. I mean, just ridiculous in his performance. My question is, as Debo returns to health, Jack, do you see it as the 49ers being able to feed both Kittle and Debo going forward, or do you picture this sort of being a yin and yang, when one is way up, the other is way down?
Well, I think the deal with Debo Samuel, and the reason that his targets are down, is because they're utilizing him as a running back
out of the backfield.
And so they're trying to limit his touches a little bit in the passing game. I think they're trying to keep him, right around that 7 to 8 touch per game range. They don't want to overutilize him in that way, and that's, so they're doing a little bit of a shuffle there. And what you're seeing is those targets that used to go to Debo in the passing game are now going more to Brandon Ayuk. So you've seen Debo Samuel's receiving numbers go down, Ayuk's numbers are coming up, and now you're seeing Kittle's go up, as well as the number of pass attempts is going up.
When you look forward, how much more dangerous is the 49ers pass attack when they have multiple options? My view on it is that if you're headed into the playoffs and you really just have one dominating receiving threat, that teams have more time to prepare for their opponents, that they do more intensive game plans directly related to their upcoming opponent. And I would think that as a defensive coordinator, it would be that much easier to scheme against a team that has really one dominant receiving threat, as opposed to being able to spread the ball around. I would think that's what makes the Arizona Cardinals such a dangerous offensive team to scheme around, is their ability to spread the ball around to so many different targets. Does that set up, now that we are getting George Kittle rounding into amazing form, does that set up for a more impressive challenge for those defensive coordinators in the playoffs?
It definitely does. You have multiple playmakers across the board that can do all these different things. And it's Debo Samuel on his run after catch, or his ability to come out of the backfield and make plays, taking a handoff 27 yards like they did yesterday, just blowing that out and getting a touchdown that way. George Kittle dominating across the board, where you're going to have to deal with him underneath, and then you're going to have to come up and run support on him once he gets the ball in his hands, and his ability still to take you deep if you have to. And you throw in Ayuk and everything he can do at different levels. And then when you throw in on top of that, Juwan Jennings making the plays that we've seen him make over the last couple of weeks, it's this the 49ers offense has a number of weapons, and it's just a matter of holding on to the football. The 49ers hold on
Yes.
football. If the 49ers hold on the football, they've shown it time and time again this year how good they are.
Playing mistake free. All right, we'll transition into our next topic. But Jack, do you want to take this one from Smith Steven? What's the update that you got today on Aziz's injury?
He has was a elbow sprain, something like that. He's day to day, so it's likely that he could play this week.
Day to day, that is fantastic news. All right, that takes us into our next topic. We're still trying to keep it PG, but I had to have the expletives in here in some way. Nick frickin' Bosa. Nick Bosa finished the game with 2 sacks, would have had the third one if the play wasn't wiped out, his first actual sack against his buddy, Joe Burrow. I love him talking about helping Joe up and telling the offensive guys, no, I got it. He's my buddy. I'm still going to sack the hell out of him, but he's my buddy. I'll pick him up off of the turf. He was in the backfield disrupting the play seemingly on every down, Jack. Is Nick Bosa special enough, in your opinion, to keep the 49ers defensive line among the very best in the league, even if, as we said earlier, we can't really find a consistent bookend to man the other side?
Yeah, that's what we've seen, right? We've seen that already happening, and I would expect to see that continue. And I think, having what they did when they decided to put Samson Ebukam opposite of Nick Bosa. I know we're focusing on Bosa, but when they put Ebukam opposite of him and kicked Eric Armstead down inside, that created the best overall group that they could come up with this year. And you add in what DJ Jones does on his base downs, and then what Arden Key does. And Nick Bosa is the guy who kind of lets all those other guys be better because of the attention that he draws.
That's interesting that you raised that being the best pairing. If we hadn't had lost Kinlaw for the season, do you think it's possible that would still be the best potential foursome to put out there, to have Eric Armstead alongside DJ Jones and Samson Ebukam on the side? Or would Kinlaw sliding inside and Armstead outside be the best if we had full health from Kinlaw?
Eric Armstead's better inside than Kinlaw is, and having Ebukam on the edge is better than having Eric Armstead on the edge. There's just too many times when you go back and you watch the film with Armstead, he's rushing from the edge and he's getting the quarterback runs around him, and it's not even a play like yesterday. I know, Burrow made that one spectacular play yesterday when the play had completely broken down and he breaks contain and throws a touchdown pass. But we haven't really seen quarterbacks do that to the 49ers, especially to the side opposite of Nick Bosa, since Samson Ebukam became the starter opposite of him. So from my view, the 49ers, this is their best group, and Kinlaw is an okay run defender, but his overall game isn't strong enough, and so he's going to be a guy they're going to probably expect a lot from next year. But right now, he wasn't one of their 5-6 best defensive players, and he was hurting them being on the field.
It sets up for some interesting decisions in free agency as to whether they spend the money to bring back the big man, as they should, and his delicious barbecue sauce. But there is some redundancy there. And again, the 49ers want depth. They want flexibility, and injuries play a factor in this. You do need to have depth there, but it'll be interesting to see how they value the individual players. They certainly have played a little bit of Moneyball with that defensive line in the decision to part ways with DeForest Buckner and paying less to Eric Armstead. With the way it's performing right now, I can't really fault the way in which they've constructed the current line, but it does set up for some interesting decisions in the offseason. Is there any chance in your mind that Bosa makes a considerable push the remainder of the season and really does make a run at either Defensive Player of the Year or Comeback Player of the Year?
Well, he's making a pretty strong run for that Comeback Player of the Year. Defensive Player of the Year across the league, I'm not so sure about that because I think he's third or fourth in sacks right now.
Yes, I think you are correct. You have Myles Garrett ahead of him. You have TJ Watt ahead of him, and someone else that escapes me.
Yeah, so I don't think Bosa's going to leapfrog those guys to become the Defensive Player of the Year, but the Comeback Player of the Year is one that he might be in be able to get. He's going to the guy that they beat yesterday, Burrow, is one of the guys that he's going to be fighting for possibly with that.
Yeah, Joe Burrow, Dak Prescott. That'll be tough sledding because the quarterback position gets so much favoritism within the NFL and the Dallas Cowboys get so much press. But it would seem that he would be a candidate.
Oh, he should definitely be a candidate for it, whether he gets it or not. He'll be a candidate for the Defensive Player of the Year as well. But whether or not he gets it, I would say I agree with you. I think the quarterback probably is going to get it over him just because quarterbacks get favored with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think he would need to have a couple of multi-sack games like he did yesterday in order to really vault himself into serious contention for either because of that quarterback bias and in the Defensive Player of the Year, just needing to jump over several players that are currently ahead of him in total sacks. If it were just on pressures, then, it might be a different story. I read an Athletic article just as we close out on Nick Bosa here and transition to Jimmy Garoppolo, but it's amazing the balance he has to his game this year. The split between left and right and having going into yesterday, 20 pressures from the left, 20 pressures from the right, that his sacks break up basically evenly from the left and from the right, that he has, 2 forced fumbles, 1 from the left, 1 from the right. And the fact that he gets to decide when he moves around the line is just really something that no other third-year defensive end gets to do in the league, just in acknowledging just how special Bosa is. All right, on to a player that is a bit more polarizing than Nick Bosa, where you have universal support from 49er faithful, breaking down Jimmy Garoppolo's game. Certainly, to me, this felt like a pretty standard Jimmy game where you take the good with the bad. But it is very striking to me how much more people, and when I say people, I mean the 49er faithful in particular, focus on the bad with Jimmy, as if we have some sort of PTSD when it comes to Jimmy Garoppolo. I saw some incredible throws, as I said earlier, into very tight windows that I must give him credit for. And yes, I saw him hold the ball a bit too long on some of the plays and take the sack. But I also thought that he intentionally pulled the ball down so as not to allow the strip sack when the pocket began to break down around him. I'd have to say that seemed smart. That was a game where had one turnover gone the Bengals' way, the game may not have fallen in the 49ers' favor. What impressed you most about Jimmy's performance Sunday, Jack?
I thought he played well. I mentioned it early at the beginning of the game, or beginning of the show, excuse me. The numbers, what he did on first down yesterday was huge for the 49ers in terms of, I don't remember exactly what it was right now. I think it was 14 of 15. And the one incompletion was a throwaway at the end of the game when they were trying to kill clock for the field goal at the end of the regulation. But other than that, he was perfect on first down. That was big. He made some really nice throws. It was a Jimmy Garoppolo game, but better than normal, right? Jimmy Garoppolo was always going to give you some what the heck moments.
Yes.
It's just the way that he is, right? But at the same time, he with very few instances, he's going to give you a chance to win the game at the end. And we saw that yesterday.
He really did come through in the clutch. And the clutch gene is something that you can't understate. You can't overstate. It really is important when you're in all of these closely contested games with the parity that exists in the NFL right now. So many games decided by one score or less, to have someone that instills confidence in the offense that is at times unflappable, while at other times admittedly frustrating in his ability to throw to a linebacker or to take an unneeded sack or to do something that just leaves you scratching your head. I think, to me, the good outweighs the bad. When you weigh it, the good and the bad with Jimmy, when you see the mistakes, but weigh it against the tight throws into small windows over the middle of the field, the ability to push it outside the numbers, maybe not consistently, but can make those throws. And yes, potentially the weakest part of his game being consistent in the deep shots. When you weigh all that together and you throw all that crap onto the scales, Jack, which way are they tilting in your mind?
Well, when you're asking me what were they tilting, are they tilting towards
Tilting
what?
towards the positive or the negative? You see Jimmy
Oh,
Garoppolo as a good, positive influence for the 49ers, or do you see him like some of the 49er faithful where it's just time to
okay.
move on?
The Jimmy Garoppolo is way better than people give him credit for.
Yes.
He just is, and I understand that he has his ups and downs. I'm not trying to tell you that he's a top 10 quarterback. I'm not even trying to say he's a top 15 quarterback, what have you. But he's nowhere near as bad as what people say. And I challenged some folks yesterday that I know on Twitter, not folks that just random people that are out there, but some folks who I've had on shows like this, who are calling him Jimmy Garbage and all that kind of stuff. That's what are you talking about? Are you not watching the game? And even my co-host on the Hammer and Nail show, Jesse, and
Yes. Jesse's not
I
very
don't have,
fond of Jimmy.
he's not, but if you sit and watch the game and you watch play after play instead of worrying about one instance and you just watch the overall play in the game, he's fine. He's, like I said, he's a top 15, 16, top 20, whatever. I know his contract is the problem, but his play isn't.
And that's just it. That's not Jimmy's fault. That's the 49ers' fault for failing to properly pay him in the first place, and then from being afraid to extend the contract or renegotiate it in some way that brought that cap figure down, right? It was the inability to commit to him long term that forced them to, keep paying him his current salary, which is too much. And I get the frustration. Sean brings it in here with Jimmy dropping the ball on that first down that ended up in the loss. Those are the plays we're talking about that does cause you to scratch your head, but you have to weigh in the positive as well. I get the frustration fans have with Jimmy Garoppolo. I get the criticism that talks about inconsistency, but I agree. I just cannot get on board with people using the little trash icon and talking about Jimmy just being a bad quarterback. It doesn't jive for me.
Well, that's a perfect example right there, right? That was a bad play. That was an awful play by Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yes.
It was a 1st and 10 play action, ball slips out of his hands. It kills the drive. It's awful. The 49ers have to punt. It was a bad play. And
yes.
I think the Bengals might have even went down and scored on their ensuing possession after that to tie the game, but that play doesn't take, as bad as that was, it wasn't a turnover. And he came back and he made the plays that it counts. And, they counted it later on. If you look over here in the comments, pull up the one from Matt Mears at 351. He says, I don't take the bad Jimmy serious or I just ignore it. No, the difference for me in the way that I watch the game is I don't take into account a single play that's an incompletion or a sack or even a fumble that results in a sack. I would sit here and I'd still tell you that was a bad play because you can't fumble the ball when you don't get hit, right? But if they had converted that for a first down, it's not as big of a bad play, right? Because all of a sudden now they're still moving the ball. Like, for example, let's take the game up in Seattle. I know we're taking a step back, but we're talking
Sure.
Jimmy Garoppolo big picture here in the way that I look at him. In Seattle on the first touchdown drive, he misses Kyle Juszczyk wide open down the sideline on the leak play. Should have been a big gain. Awful, bad throw. I even tweeted out right away, you got to hit that.
Yes.
But then the thing is, he comes back on the next play. He completes a pass to Kittle for a nice gain. He completes another one, or the completion to Juszczyk, completion to Kittle. They get all that yardage back and score a touchdown anyway. So are you going to sit here and you're going to complain about him missing a throw that they eventually score a touchdown on? Or are you just going to realize that the game of football has multiple dimensions to it, and just because you have one bad play doesn't mean that the rest of the drive is garbage. One of the things that is huge when it comes to quarterbacking is you've got to have the ability to forget about the mistakes. You make a bad play, you live on to the next play. And that's the thing for me when I evaluate Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't get caught up on just the bad stuff. I look at the whole picture of it, and is he a flawed quarterback? Yes. Is he as bad as anybody wants to make him out to be? No.
No, you do have to look at the games in their totality, and that's the critical piece, because yes, there will be mistakes, and I think a criticism like this I can get on board with much more so. Jimmy's not trash. I like Jimmy, but he is limited and makes mistakes. Jimmy almost threw a pick six with the game on the line, but he can win games. That goes on to say more. But what Felipe is pointing out there, that to me is a valid conversation about Jimmy Garoppolo. If you want to have a nuanced dialogue about the fact that, yes, Jimmy is inconsistent, Jimmy makes the occasional boneheaded play, yes, but if you fail to bring up the strengths that he brings to the table and when he's able to execute, and the fact that he does have the memory of a goldfish, if we're quoting Ted Lasso here, and he can forget that last play, that's what you need at the quarterback position. Plus, I want to call this out before we move on from Jimmy into our two last topics as we try to wrap this thing up quickly. Brandon Ayuk's comments in the presser about the confidence of Jimmy Garoppolo and how that inspired him on the final couple of drives, knowing that Jimmy would come in and be able to deliver in the clutch. I watch, criticize Russell Wilson all you want, but if you watch NFL films and you see him on the sideline in one of his many comebacks that he has had in the NFL, he walks by every offensive player and tells them matter-of-factly, hey, we're about to go win this thing right now. And he is so convinced of it that it makes me believe, as I watch through the television, I get chills just talking about it, and I do not like the guy. I do not like his team. I can only imagine what it feels like to be a member of his squad and feel that inspiration. And it sounded to me as if Brandon Ayuk was laying out that same case for Jimmy Garoppolo. Maybe he is not the most vocal guy in the locker room. Maybe he's not the most impressive guy at the podium. Maybe he has a few nervous tics that come across in him constantly touching his face. And maybe his confidence is a little bit damaged from having an OCD perfectionist coach who demands that he deliver on a regular basis. But I think you hear the team talk about him and you hear the team talk about a leader. And that to me matters.
Yeah, that's it, you're right on the money there. And yeah, I saw somebody mention this today about Kyle Shanahan as well. The 49ers have had so many ups and downs, but
Yes.
you haven't seen Shanahan lose his stuff on the
No.
sideline, even when things were going bad. He a bad play here and there, of course, he whatever, but it's not like he's completely losing his mind. And you never see that from Garoppolo either. He just it's. I understand how it could be frustrating for a fan base to see that the guy's not screaming at everybody and so on and so forth, but he just does his business and goes out there and makes plays. And I laughed last week about there was a in the press conference afterwards there he kind of made a comment about how some shit happened, right? And they were
Yeah.
talking about and he's kind of chuckling about it, and he's talking about the read option play that failed. I mean, he's just being Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah.
That's how he is. It's not that I don't think people took that to mean that he wasn't upset about the loss, but I don't see that in Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't see him as a guy who doesn't want to be there, which is one thing that we hear a lot of. I don't see him as a guy who uh, doesn't want to play and it's not important to him. I think that's extremely important to him. He's just doing the best he can with what's put in front of him.
I believe in that wholeheartedly. There's some great pieces that go back and detail Jimmy Garoppolo's past history and his transition from being a linebacker to a quarterback and his college days, and it paints a very complete picture of him. Anyone that wants to get past their PTSD on Jimmy Garoppolo, I recommend going back, finding those articles, and reading them. Jack, I know we're about to go over. Are you okay going a couple of minutes, or do you have a hard out here? We can respect that.
No, we're good.
Okay, fantastic. We got two more topics that are quick hitters. The next one we're getting into is the debut of the rookie. Certainly, it's fair to say that most would imply that Ambry Thomas had a rough debut. It was highlighted by the two very costly penalties and three big catches against him. I actually felt that it was somewhat of a mixed performance, but maybe I'm being overly optimistic with that. Jack, what was your overall impression of Ambry Thomas's debut?
I thought it was okay. He had some strong plays, and uh, he had some that weren't quite so good. The 49ers definitely were playing a lot of zone coverage and doing a lot of things to help him out over the top with safeties and things like that. Uh, but it worked out for them until late in the game, and uh, he had a couple of bad reads on some coverages where he came up where I think he should have stayed deep a little bit more to kind of help that safety.
Yeah, he
have
played
time
the
to get
underneath
over.
on a couple of those, and it did burn us.
Yeah, but overall, I mean, uh, he was fine. He wasn't spectacular, but he wasn't bad either. So for a rookie making his first NFL start, having played only 20 snaps of defense coming into yesterday, I think you got to chalk him up with a solid C plus kind of effort.
I thought so too. Felipe thinks I'm being soft here, and maybe I am. Maybe I will admit that I am overly optimistic. But here's how I see it: the two penalties were definitely big, and I would say, while I'm not going to complain about officiating, that I think the first seemed pretty ticky tack to me. That strikes me as, yes, they were big. Yeah, they wiped out two enormous plays, so the timing of them was very poor. But let's be honest, when we're talking about hands to the face, it strikes me as something that's easily correctable. And so that to me is not something where I'm overly concerned. The timing of it was terrible, yes. And then you look at his PFF grade. His PFF grade was atrocious because he was targeted 4 times and allowed 3 big completions. And I would say that he was only targeted 4 times. If his coverage were so terrible, wouldn't he have been targeted a whole lot more? Now, I acknowledge that he certainly had an abundance of safety help. Just from casual observation, not having gone back through to do extensive breakdown of the film on the defense. But what I saw was that the 49ers were primarily in coverages that allowed the safeties to help on the outside, as you would expect with deficiencies at cornerback. Do you see it that way? That yes, he got targeted a bit, but the idea that he wasn't consistently targeted shows that he wasn't blowing coverages the entire game.
No, he was fine for through portions of the game. It was like I said, they played a lot of. It seemed like they were playing a lot of zone yesterday, which uh, makes sense when you consider what they had on the back end. And uh, the 49ers defense and Ambry Thomas played well. They definitely got helped out by the 2 fumbles on punt returns, which
Yes.
allowed them not to have to go on the field at that point. But it was a decent effort for somebody who hadn't even, like I said, he'd only had 20 snaps on defense before yesterday. So given what they were going up against, really one of the best passing games in the NFL, I thought he played okay.
Yeah, let's emphasize that. One of the best passing attacks in the NFL. I mean, that 3-headed monster, just ridiculous. And I'll close on this point about Ambry Thomas, is that we, as the 49er faithful, have been clamoring to see rookies out there. And the vast majority of the arguments that you hear from 49er faithful are let them improve while on the field. Well, to me, that's what you're seeing. You are seeing Ambry Thomas getting out there for the first time and getting some reps. And he is a rookie. That's what it looks like. That's what it looks like when you allow the rookie to struggle a little bit. And the hope is that he just continues to develop, that he learns from this experience, he watches the film, and the next game he gets a little bit better. I saw enough from Ambry Thomas that I'm encouraged, especially as we look at E-Man eventually being able to come back from the high ankle sprain and Ambry just needing to fill in his stead.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens here because Thomas got the concussion late yesterday, so he's in the protocol. And then when he went out late there in overtime, Lenore came in. Lenore played pretty decent there as well in the few snaps that he got. So it'll be interesting to see what the Friars do here for the next couple of weeks.
Love to see the rookies out there, even if they do get burned on occasion, because that's just what happens in the NFL. The rules favor the offense, people. All right, looking at the super chat here, Aaron with 49ers first takes coming in just to be kind. Coming through to support my good friend Rob. Definitely a fan of Jack Hammer as well, as people should be. Keep bringing it, fellas. Thank you, Aaron. Honestly, that means a great deal. Glad that we will get to connect in the coming days. All right, let's close this thing out on a positive note here, Jack. And that is the man, the myth, the legend, Deebo Samuel comes out clean. Some extremely positive news is absolutely that Deebo escaped the game without re-aggravating his groin injury. A major concern for me going into this one. I am not going to lie. That would have made a win feel like a loss for me. Jack, do you expect Debo's usage in the pass game to climb in the coming weeks as he works his way back into health? Or are the 49ers seeing more from him out of the backfield? And do you anticipate they'll stick with that in limiting his number of total overall touches? Will more continue to come from the backfield?
I think they have to, because the 49ers don't have that explosive running back in the backfield. Uh, whatever I understand that Elijah Mitchell's been a good back this year, but he doesn't have that ability to make plays on his own. I mean, all backs and runners have to have some help from their offensive linemen, but a guy like Debo Samuel or a guy like Raheem Mostert, they have the ability to get out of some jams that other players just don't have. That's what makes them special, right? And those two guys are special players. Elijah Mitchell's a really good player, but they need the explosiveness out of Debo Samuel. I wrote a piece after the one of the games. I think it was either the Rams game or the week after, basically saying that they're the thunder and lightning. Really, you've got Mitchell's the thunder. He's the power guy that's going to be banging inside, getting you your 10 to 15 yard tough runs up inside, and then you have Debo Samuel who hits the home runs for you. And that's what we've seen. And yesterday they did a really good job of shutting Samuel down. Cincinnati did, but I don't think we're going to see the 49ers go away from that. I think I think they finally hit on something that really works for this team, and you're going to continue to see it. I would like to see them. The only thing I will say is I would like to see them use him on some screens more than they have recently. And
I like that idea, getting him the ball in space in that way. It is, I wondered if it was matchup dependent, and that's why they continue to switch to getting him those looks out of the backfield, getting him those touches, those handoffs. But I think that you're right, that they just have found a combination there. His short area quickness, his ability to get around the outside, it's a deceptive speed. When I watched that touchdown replay yesterday, it didn't appear he was going to get the corner. I mean, the defensive back had the correct angle on him, and then there you see him round the edge and just gaining speed on him. Those tree trunks for legs just moving at a ridiculous rate of speed. It's just remarkable for me. And to me, it must be because he's not super elite Raheem Mostert top end speed, but his ability to go from 0 to 60 seems to be unmatched.
Oh yeah, I agree with you. It's funny because it doesn't look like he's running faster than everybody, but then you see him all of a sudden he's just running. Everybody looks like they're going like they're going the wrong way on those people movers at the airport while he's going, running on in the other direction. It's amazing. And you add in the fact, like you said, the tree trunks for legs. The guy's built like a running back, and
it's unbelievable.
And not only that, I know we're talking about him as a runner, but the catch that he made I think he only had the one reception yesterday, but that reception and that play that he made there was really nice because he just does such a good job of fighting for the football, and he's just running a dagger route, which is it's a dagger concept with a vertical with him coming on across on the dig underneath it. But that's going to be a tight window catch that he attacks the football, and by attacking the football, he jumps basically in front of the linebacker that's coming to the direction. And takes
that was
the ball
glorious.
It's really good.
Yes, that is a heady football play to come back to the ball and eliminate the potential of the pick on that play, because that's where the ball needed to be placed, and then the receiver bears the responsibility of fighting back toward the football and not just allowing it to come to them, because the defender is fighting toward that football. I think football fans in general, but 49er faithful in particular, really need to appreciate the special season we are watching unfold. I mean, this is history in the making right here. Debo Samuel is earning himself a fortune in money, and he's going to deserve it. He is going to set up his family for generations to come because of what we're watching him do on the football field week in and week out. And if you close your eyes, man, this season will be over and you will have missed it. So keep your eye on Debo Samuel going forward. This thing has been and will continue to be special All right, we got a couple of questions to close out on, and then we are going to get you out of here, Jack. Couple of quick ones here. I'm going to answer LS10. Rob Schuh, the 49ers are 9-point favorites to win versus the Falcons. Do you think that is too many points? I do. I think that games in the NFL are often one-score games, so I would quickly say if I'm betting that, I'm fine betting the money line. You're not going to get much money back on that, but I am not going to give up 9 points. That, to me, is just too stressful. Jack, I'm going to throw this one to you. Ritty Music coming in asking, when is Mitchell predicted to come back? I thought he might come back this week, but I was obviously very wrong about that. Do you anticipate he'll return for next week's game against Atlanta?
I think there's a chance that he'll be back this week. The conference call today got a little wonky with somebody accidentally producing television during the middle of it, so they had to stop and restart it, and I wasn't able to get back on afterwards because they changed the call-in number. So I don't have an update for you on there, but I would think that there's a possibility that he's going to be back this next week. The only way that I don't think he comes back is if that knee is more of an issue than they've let on.
That makes sense. And then we've got the notorious GAV, Gavin from across the pond. Anybody have an update on Cannon? Trenton Cannon, same scenario, just the very severe concussion, but again, a potential to return this week. Is that correct?
No, they placed him on injured reserve on
Saturday. Oh, my goodness. I was unaware of that. And that's all related to the head injury?
I assume so. I'm not sure. I haven't to ask anybody on that, but I'm fairly certain that he was placed on. Let me just go back through really quick, and I'll.
Yeah, as you pull that up, I'll get into the super chat here that Jav B put in. Why do people hate when Jimmy gets any sort of credit? I cannot answer this one. It is a mystery to me. It's stress. It's people being emotionally invested into the 49ers, and emotion can make you irrational. That's my best answer for it, is that we have seen boneheaded plays by Jimmy that do leave you scratching your head, and those stick in your brain. And some of those have led to losses. Although when you look at the totality of it, Jimmy certainly has won more than he's lost. But I think it is the emotional attachment and the irrationality that we have placed on Jimmy G in not delivering in some clutch moments. I think when you look at it, as Jack suggested, in totality for the game, if you look at it with your rational mind, it's hard to come up with anything other than Jimmy Garoppolo contributes to winning for the San Francisco 49ers, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing with Garoppolo, if Garoppolo is getting paid $10 million, $15 million a year, I don't think we have the conversations that we have. But because he's making $27 million, that's one of them. There's the joke. Everybody always cracks the jokes about his looks and all that kind of stuff. I don't really, I don't know. I think the money is a big part of it, though, just because his cap hit is so high. And I think what happens here is you look at his career with the 49ers, all he's done is win. I know that people hate to hear that argument.
They do.
But it's the truth. His lone season as the starting quarterback all season long, 13-3, go to the Super Bowl. This is the second time now that he's looking to, be able to be the starter for the majority of the season. It looks like the 49ers are going to make the playoffs again. I don't know if they're going to make it to the Super Bowl necessarily, but there's something to the fact that when Jimmy Garoppolo is playing quarterback, the 49ers win at a higher rate. And they're 14-3 on the road since 2019. With Garoppolo at quarterback, they're 29-13 in the regular season with him. There's just so much there, and it's the up and down nature of his game, and people just get so caught up on one negative play here that it takes away from everything. So
it does take away from it. We do get caught up on those plays. Ellis agrees with me. Emotions cause you to make irrational thoughts. That is for sure. We're going to end this on a positive one that Mark put in. Celebration of River Craycraft recovering that botched punt. I mean, shout out. The dude comes up from the practice squad, contributes against Seattle, and then has a key play against the Bengals, helping the 49ers win. What better way to end on a positive? Jack, I just want to say thank you so much for joining me today. It is always an absolute pleasure to have you on here, my friend.
No, anytime, man. I love coming on here and chatting with you. It's always fun. You're pretty level-headed, and it's always fun to come in here and chat with you. The River Craycraft piece, that's awesome. I even had that in my article after the game yesterday. I put him down as one of the heroes because, hey, it's River Craycraft. That's first off, it's a great first name, River. and then he goes out there and but didn't they used to play at Three River Stadium, or maybe that was Pittsburgh? But makes that play, and I thought that was awesome. It's kind of all of Kyle Shanahan's belief in that guy paid off yesterday.
Yes, and Kyle does believe. You could see it beaming through, the pride in his face when he talked about it in the presser. Well, Jack, again, always a pleasure to have you on. Anybody who wants a great follow, a level-headed follow on 49ers Twitter, which is rare, let me tell you, follow Jack Hammer. He also contributes over there at the Press Democrat. You can go read his phenomenal articles. They are not hidden behind a paywall. And he has his very own YouTube channel that if you do not subscribe to, you should subscribe to, because as you saw today, the content is there. The insight is there. Jack, thanks so much for joining me. I will probably be back live tomorrow. Was going to have Vish joining me on Tuesday. We're going to reschedule that, but I think I've been able to line up another guest in the last minute cancellation. So until tomorrow, Jack, thanks for joining me. 49er faithful, here's to you.
Hey, real quick. I know you're doing your out.
Yeah, hit me.
Can I just ask anybody that's watching this, just do me a favor, go to 49ers.pressdemocrat.com on your web browser. You're already on your phone, or you're watching, some kind of a device here that allows you to get to the internet. Go over there, make it one of your favorites so that you can easily get there. I need to try to get the views up on that page back to where they used to be. And if there's any way that possible that you guys could help that out, like Rob said, I try to put content out on a daily basis. It would be awesome to see you guys over there. And I know a lot of folks like to argue back and forth on Twitter, but that website over there, and Rob probably knows from the old days, there's some really argumentative guys over there for you as well. So you can go over there and argue with them all you want.
Yes, this is an interactive group. You heard Jack. Get over there, support the Press Democrat website. I'm going to be doing the same. So I challenge all of you to go ahead. Oh, look at that, Jack. Throw up the website again. Please repeat that for the folks.
Yeah, it's 49ers and then Press Democrat, all one word, .com. So 49ers.pressdemocrat.com.
All right, folks.
If you're subscribed to my channel, if you watched my show yesterday, I had it on loop underneath my show at the end of the game yesterday.
Make it happen. Make it happen. I will be there as well. Let's get into the comments and make some chatter occur on the Press Democrat. All right, 49er faithful, I will see you again soon.